3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hey guys, welcome back to the 39th episode of the Huggy Poker Vlog. This is a special episode where I'm actually going to commentate my appearance from the 2-5 live stream at 52 Social. If you saw the last episode of my vlog, you'll remember Naked James, who is actually on my right, probably the best seat to have him on in this game, and he starts out the stream living up to his name by not wearing his shirt, so interesting start to the stream right away. Doesn't take too long to get something playable when we get Jack-9 suited about 5 minutes in. We see Zenus limp in, and I decided before getting to the live stream that I was going to play this one aggressively, just like the last one I was on, and I raised to 25 in position. We end up getting two callers, though we're still in position thankfully, and we end up getting a pretty unfavorable flop when it comes down Queen High. We don't hit anything, but when we get checked to, we're definitely c-betting here, and thankfully we take it down, so we win our first pot of the night, and feeling pretty good about that. It's kind of nice to start with a win to ease the nerves a little bit and start off on the right foot. A few minutes later, we get a suited ace, ace-7 in the +2 position. I make a pretty loose raise here. Not a great hand, but one that I'm interested in seeing a flop with. Caitlin, who's right behind us in middle position, 3-bets, pretty big, and when it folds around to us, there's a lot of things that beat us here. Not really a great hand to take to a flop out of position, especially heads up, so I just give this one up. About 5 minutes later, we straddle under the gun for $10, and it folds around to Zenus, who raises with what we see as pocket queens, though obviously I don't know at the time what he's got. It folds back to us, and I decide to go ahead and call the extra 30 to see a flop with our suited connector.
I don't like that call out of position.
I don't either, but everybody loves suited connectors.
I'm curious what you guys think about defending here. If 7-6 is not the hand we should be defending with, what is the right hand? The flop comes down. It looks semi-decent at first, but I realize all we've got is a gut shot, and 8 will give us a straight, and we've got a backdoor flush draw too, but not really something that I want to be calling down out of position with. So with that in mind, when Zenus continuation bets here, I decide just to give this one up. We're pretty card dead for the next 40 minutes, and honestly, I was pretty card dead throughout the whole session, to be honest. I actually had a few of you reach out to me and bring up just how card dead I was, so it wasn't just me thinking that, apparently. In this hand, we've got 10-7 suited, which is one of the best hands we've seen in a while, sadly. Zenus raises it up to 25 in the +2 position, Naked James calls behind, and I decide to get aggressive here since I haven't done much for a while, and I 3-bet to 125, hoping it'll get respect. It folds back around to Zenus, who folds, and now it's on Naked James. The commentators have this to say.
I don't think Naked James has folded King 10 in his life.
And based upon how we saw Naked James play in our previous session, I'm expecting a call out of him here too. But, surprisingly, we get the fold and our aggression works. We take it down.
But he gets it, Huggy gets it through
Show
with
it
his,
to him, show it to him.
Nah. If Huggy would have showed it there, James would have been wide open.
That's
Big
why
mistake.
I thought that was a...
Big mistake, Huggy. Big mistake, bud.
Another 20 minutes pass before this next hand when Naked James straddles to 10, I re-straddle to 20, and Caitlin then triple straddles to 30. It folds all the way around to Naked James, who calls the 30, and now I'm getting a pretty good price. I've got to pay about 20 to win potentially, 67 in the pot, so not bad odds. My hand looks terrible on the screen. It's showing I've got 9-5 off, but the graphic's actually wrong. I've got King 9, not 9-5. I can't recall if it was suited or not, though. Caitlin ends up checking her option, and the three of us head to the flop. It comes down ace high, and we all end up checking through to Caitlin, who checks back. So I'm thinking that if Caitlin had an ace here and position, she probably would have bet it. And leading into the turn, when James ends up checking to us again, I feel like this might be a good opportunity to steal with just our king high. So with that in mind, I just take a stab at the pot here, hoping that we can get one through. Unfortunately for us, Caitlin calls, so we're headed to the river where we see the deuce peel off, which would give us a straight if the graphic was correct, but it's not, unfortunately. I check to Caitlin with the plan of giving this one up. She bets. Obviously, we've only got king high here, so I give this one up and on to the next one. Another 20 minutes pass before this next hand when king high straddles to 15 under the gun, and there's two callers before it comes to us. We look down at ace-jack suited in the small blind, which is the best hand we've had in the past hour and a half of playing, and I'm definitely planning to raise it up here. With 2 callers already showing interest and us being out of position, I'd go with a big raise, making it $110. King Kai, who straddled and who I know likes to play some pretty random cards, makes the call, and we're heads up to the flop. It's a pretty interesting flop for my hand regardless of what he's holding. Ace-jack on a king-queen-jack board, we've got bottom pair with a gut shot. It feels like it might be the best hand. There's definitely a chance that it could not be the best hand, and it's kind of hard to navigate this one out of position. We've shown strength though, and I'm going to c-bet here regardless of our holding, so I make it $125. Obviously, we can see what King Kai's holding here. He's got the nuts. Easy for him to slow play this one in position and let me keep barreling at it, so he makes the call. The turn doesn't change anything. I was going to check this one over regardless if we didn't improve, so I go ahead and check it over, and King Kai essentially doubles the bet from the previous street, making it $230. This is a pretty awkward spot to be in my shoes, and it's even a little bit more intimidating being on the live stream where I feel like if I make the wrong decision, I'm going to look dumb either way, regardless of whether I should be calling or folding. I know King Kai can play some wild cards. He can definitely play aggressive with just total bluffs, and I've got that in the back of my mind too. I feel like my decision here has to be to either call all the way down or give up here, and ultimately, knowing what kind of player he is, I decide I've just got to call down. Probably not the best strategy when it's kind of a coin flip in my mind. I should probably just give this one up and look for a better spot, but just giving my perspective since I can't give that in the live stream, obviously. The river brings another 5 pairing the board, and we check it over as planned, and King Kai bets again for only $300 this time. In my mind, I'm really unhappy with his bet size just because it looks like a value bet, it feels like a value bet, it smells like a value bet. I'm pretty sure it's a value bet, but I had made up my mind on the turn that if I was going to call him down, I was calling all the way, and so ultimately, despite it looking like a value bet, I go ahead and make the call. We obviously see the bad news, and we're down a good chunk for the night at this point. I end up adding on for another $1,000 after this, so we're in for $2,000 total at this point. 10 or so minutes later, we straddle into the gun again. King Kai raises it up to $30. There's 2 callers, and it folds back to us. We don't have a very good hand, obviously. 10-3 suited in the straddle, but I decide we've hardly seen any flops tonight. It's only $20 more to call. There's already 3 players in the pot, and we're closing the action, so screw it. Let's see a flop. And the flop's pretty interesting. It gives us a gut shot to a straight. Any king or 8 would give us a straight, though obviously we don't know if anybody's on a hard draw. Zenus in the small blind ends up leading out for $50 here. Naked James folds, and it's on us. So we've still got King Kai behind us, who is the pre-flop raiser. He could raise even if we call here, which is a little bit intimidating, but we've got some equity, and I feel like there's a chance he won't raise given that I know he does play a lot of random cards, so I go ahead and make the call here. King Kai ends up making the call too, so the 3 of us head to the turn. We see the second queen peel off on the turn, and now Zenus checks to us. Given the fact that he's checking here, along with the fact that King Kai just called in position on the flop, there's a chance that we could represent the queen here getting some folds. With that, I go ahead and make a pretty sizable bet, making it $200. When King Kai calls, I think maybe he's got a queen with a king or an ace possibly if he's playing a legitimate hand here. Zenus makes the fold, and we're heads up now, heading to the river. When the river peels the 8, giving us the straight, I'm pretty sure we've got the best hand here. It's possible he's got a boat with a hand like Queen 9 or Queen Jack, but it's likely we've got the best hand. As soon as my finger touched the table, I knew I should have bet instead of checking, but unfortunately my hand acted faster than my brain did here, and we miss out on some value when King Kai obviously checks back, unfortunately. A few minutes later, we get what's probably the best hand of the night for us in a PLO bomb pot, just a single board for this one. We've got pocket aces with a queen jack, and one of our aces is suited, so pretty good starting hand, which if this was a normal PLO game, I'd definitely be raising pre-flop. Unfortunately, the flop doesn't help us in any way. We don't hit any kind of pair or draw, and it's likely that given the fact this is a bomb pot, we're probably behind some random 2 pair. Unfortunately, I think the graphic might actually be wrong here, with one of the aces being the wrong suit. I distinctly remember thinking at the table that I didn't have the ace of diamonds, and even if we hit the ace of diamonds on the turn, it would bring in the flush, and so it wasn't really a good legitimate out for us. With that in mind, I can see why the commentators were not happy with the fact that I didn't peel off a card here, but I really do recall only having one out for the ace, which of course, after we fold our hand here, that one card spikes the turn, and we would have hit trips, would have hit the nuts, and we look pretty stupid for folding right away, but really, I wasn't getting a good price to call for one out. I really do not believe I had 2 outs. I think the overlay's wrong, but it's definitely possible I did have 2 outs at the time and just misread my hand. Either way, we fold what would have been the winner. Not a big loss. We lose $15 here, but obviously could have won a bit more. Another 20 minutes passed before this next hand, which is probably one of the most interesting hands I was involved in for the night. Naked James straddles under the gun, and we look down at King Queen offsuit in the +1 position. I raise it up to $35, and we get called by both King Kai and Naked James, who are the two craziest players at the table, I would say. The flop comes down King High, giving us top pair, but it's all hearts, and we don't have a heart in our hand. Still, when Naked James checks to us, I'm gonna c-bet here, and I put out a bet of $75. King Kai ends up folding, which actually, looking at his hand here, is a pretty tight fold. He's got second pair, although I guess he's probably pretty worried about the fact that he has no draw to go with it. We then get check raised heads up by Naked James, who makes it $250. It's a bit of a scary raise, but we've got position. I know that he can play aggressively. I feel like he could definitely have a draw here with a worse pair at best, so I end up making the call. The turn shouldn't change anything. It's a total brick when it brings the 3 of clubs, and now Naked James checks to us. With him checking here, I'm thinking maybe he's got a pair with a heart, or maybe he's got a combo draw of some sort, but I'm a little too intimidated to bet out here with the idea that I could get check raised again, so I end up checking back. The river ends up bringing an offsuit 9, and although the flush misses, some other draws do get there. And now Naked James overbets the pot as a lead into us for $700. You can't hear the table banter, unfortunately, but I actually ask him if he's got Queen 10 with a heart or 10-9 with a heart. I figure given the action, he had to have some kind of combo draw that either ended up getting there or just missed with a pair, and he's trying to bluff into us now. Honestly, if I didn't have that ace-jack hand that I punted against King Kai earlier, I think I would have called here pretty quickly, but I felt like an idiot with that call down earlier, and I didn't want to look stupid twice, so I ended up letting him get the best of me, and I lay down the best hand here, unfortunately. 10 minutes later, we've got another interesting hand we're involved in. There's a $10 straddle, and Jeff in the 9 seat, who hasn't been raising hardly anything at all tonight, raises to $50. It's a pretty big raise, and it's from a player who's not been very aggressive tonight. It ends up folding around to us in the big blind, and we look down at ace-queen. Again, we've had almost no playable hands tonight. We've been card dead for the whole night, and I feel like we've got to play this one. Maybe we should just be calling here, but at the time I felt like, since we hardly played anything, we've got to be aggressive, and I'm going to go for a raise here. We're out of position against Jeff, though, and I don't want to be out of position post-flop, so I decided to make it big, raising to $200. It folds back to Jeff, and he ends up 4-betting to $600. So at this point, it's either shove or fold. Man, we have been so card dead tonight, and the few times we actually have had a hand, we've been in such difficult spots. It's a bit frustrating, but I'm trying not to let it get the best of me, and I'm thinking through what he could be doing this with here. I think he could have a pair, obviously. Aces, kings, queens, jacks. I didn't really think it was going to be as low as 10s, to be honest, but I figured a pair was very likely here. If he didn't have a pair, I figured it probably had to be an ace-king type hand, which we're way behind, so taking that all into account, we're going to be a coin flip at best. I don't really like the idea of shipping all the money in here, given that it's going to be a coin flip at best, so ultimately, I just lay this one down, unfortunately. We don't play anything for the next 45 minutes. I mean, when I say we're card dead, we have just been card dead the whole night. Finally, I find myself in a pretty interesting spot where I feel like maybe I can make a steal. There's a $10 straddle followed by a $20 straddle, and the next player limps in for 20 as well. It folds to us, and I decide to raise big, hoping to just take the dead money out there, making it $110 with 5-4 offsuit. Not the greatest hand, but obviously we're going to know where we stand if we go to the flop. Caitlin wakes up with a premium behind us, and the announcers expect that she's going to raise, but she ends up just calling. If you look closely at the clip, she actually threw some extra chips out there, but apparently, she told us later, it was the wrong denomination of chip, and she ended up calling when she meant to raise. So we're pretty fortunate that we didn't get raised out of the hand right away. Devin in the small blind ends up making the call as well, so we end up having 3 of us head to the flop, and we've got 5 high. The flop is quite interesting. It comes down 3 deuces, so anyone holding a pair here has a boat. The small blind checks to us, and I make a c-bet for $180. Thankfully, neither player has a pair, and they both end up folding their hands, so we take it down with the worst hand. 20 minutes later, there's another straddle and double straddle, followed by a limp in for $20. Jeff in the +3 position raises it up to $80, and PCR Poker ends up making the call. It folds to us in the small blind, and we look down at King-Queen suited, another premium for us, again in the worst position at the table. I don't want to just call here, I want to keep the aggression on when we've got these big hands, so I decide to go with a raise despite being in the small blind, making it $300. It's a pretty big raise, but we're out of position. We've got 2 players that already showed interest with $80 bets and calls, and I'm hoping we can just take it down here. It folds back to Jeff, who ends up making the call, and that ends up encouraging PCR Poker to call as well. So we end up having 3 of us head to the flop in a $950 pot. The flop comes out king high, so we've got top pair second kicker, and we've only got a little more than a pot-sized bet left here. I don't really feel like it makes sense to bet anything other than pushing all in, so I do just that. Jeff ends up thinking for quite a while, counting out his chips, and eventually he does make the right laydown. PCR Poker, who tried to go set mining on us, missed as well. He folds, and we pick up a much needed pot to bring us back up slightly above even for the night. We're up about $200 at this point. This next hand ends up being the very last hand for the night. I'll admit, we haven't gotten to play many hands, and knowing it's the last hand of the night, that definitely encourages me to want to play it. There's a $10 straddle, and Zenith limps in first to act. Naked James folds to us, and we've got Jack-7 suited. Not a great hand, but screw it, we've hardly gotten to play tonight. I decide to limp in as well. King Kai makes a pretty hefty raise on the button, making it $65. I obviously can't see his cards like you can now, but seeing him raise the 9-3 suited, you can maybe get a feel for why I called down with the Ace-Jack earlier. We end up going 5-handed to the flop, so it's a pretty large pot, and we're not in very good position. We're hoping to hit something if we can. And we do end up hitting something. We flop top pair. We don't have a great kicker, but when everyone checks to us, I think there's a chance our hand could be good. I don't want to just lead out with King Kai, the preflop raiser, to act behind us, so I check to him knowing that he can be aggressive. He bets as expected, making it $135. Everyone folds back to us, and now I'm thinking there's probably a good chance we've got the best hand. I feel like his bet size was pretty small relative to the pot, and if he actually had something like an overpair or top pair top kicker, he probably would have bet a little bit more into this wide field of players. With that in mind, I decide to put in a check raise, and I make it $400, so $265 more for him to call. He actually doesn't end up thinking for too long before making the call, and now I'm doubting myself whether I actually might have the best hand here. We're going to be out of position for the rest of this hand with a growing pot, and I'm thinking in my head, please just put a 7 out there. And wouldn't you know it, the turn brings exactly what we asked for, a 7, so we've got 2 pair now. If he actually does have an overpair or top pair top kicker, we've got the best hand now, and we just outdrew him. With that in mind, and knowing that he called us on the flop, I'm hoping that he's willing to call a bigger bet here, and I bet for about half pot, $650. He asks for a chip count, trying to get an idea of how much I have behind. I let him know how much I've got, and he ends up calling again, so I'm just praying to avoid anything that looks like it might complete any kind of draw on the river. The river brings an offsuit ace, and now I'm just thinking, shit, I hope he does not have ace-jack, which is one of the hands I feared he has. In retrospect, I probably should have checked here since anything we're ahead of is not going to call a bet here on the river, and a bluff might be willing to put in the rest of their stack trying to get me off a hand. What actually ends up happening though is I push all in, continuing with my aggression, and we can see that he missed his flush draw and he ends up laying it down. This last hand of the night, after being card dead for so long, absolutely made our night, and we book a solid win for the live stream. We walk away with a win of over $1,400. Looking at some of these other stats, you can see that my numbers are actually lower compared to the last live stream that I was on. My VPIP's only 25% here, and that's just because we were pretty card dead the whole night. We only raised pre-flop 13% of the time, and our aggression factor was pretty low on the list at only 30%. All said and done though, despite not being able to play too many hands for the night, we squeaked out a win at the last minute, and we were actually the second biggest winner of the night. Half the players at the table continued after the live stream. I only stayed for about 15 or 20 minutes, and we got a rush of cards and ended up winning about $500 more beyond what we already won on the live stream, which was a really nice boost at the end of the night. All said and done, that brings our bankroll up to 23.3K, so we're getting really close to a goal of the 25K bankroll for the year. As always, thank you for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe, it really helps the channel grow. Leave a comment, I'll get back to you as always, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys.